Hi everyone, I'm Carly from Bell's Books, and today I'm going to talk about two things. I want to talk about book clubs, and I'm going to do a review of Diving Bells by Lucy Wood, which is the book that I have just read for my book group. Okay, so my book club is in Cambridge, and we meet once a month, there or thereabouts, and we're quite small at the moment. There's only 4 of us that meet on a regular basis. There was more, but people moved to another country. That's you, Kaya. And it just dwindled a little bit. So we're always looking for new members, and sometimes we drag them in, but other times it's just the 4 of us. So on Monday we met up. We always meet at the same cafe in Cambridge, which is right next to my old uni. We order some food and get some drinks, and the person that has picked the book has to provide like a list of questions, so just to lead the discussion. So we generally talk for about an hour and a half, and it's just a lovely time. We have a lovely time just talking about what we thought about it. We'll go through the list of questions, have a bit to eat, and it's really nice. And then at the end, we take it in turns, so we go round, and whoever's turn it is next to pick a book will either say I want to read this, or give us a couple of suggestions, and then we all kind of vote and go, oh, okay, let's pick this one. So it was my choice for this time, obviously. So we talked about Diving Bells by Lucy Wood, and at the end of the discussion it was Elizabeth's turn, and she picked a book that was already on my TBR, so I was well pleased with that, because I love it when a book gets picked that isn't my choice, that is one that I want to read anyway. So Elizabeth picked Circe by Madeline Miller. Yeah! So that was on my to read pile anyway, because it's on the Women's Prize shortlist, so I was well chuffed for that. The premise of our book group is that all the books we read have to have won an award. It can be any award or prize. So we've done a lot of the big ones, so like the Women's Prize for Fiction, Man Booker, all the big ones, but it can be really obscure, never heard of prize as well. I think we've done little sci-fi awards and prizes. We try and read a lot of different types of books, so as well as standard literary fiction, we'll read genre fiction. We've done YA. I think they've done poetry, not since I've been there. I've been only in this book group for 3 years, but they do keep a list of all the books they've read. It's quite nice to look back and see everything that we've read. And yeah, we try and keep it varied. I think we've done memoir, short stories, dystopian novels, all sorts. So we try and mix it up and keep it a bit fresh. So we put a date in the diary, usually about a month's time. We have a Facebook group, so we'll always post on there what the next book is. We make an event, we invite everyone, and we also post the questions there before we meet. So I was a bit slack this time. I was reading right up to the last minute and only posting my questions like an hour before we met. But it doesn't matter, it's just, it's very informal. It's just for us to kind of lead the discussion. Now I always find it a little bit difficult with short stories, because you can't kind of say, well, what did you think about this particular character, and the flow of the narrative is different because it's all different stories. So I had lots of very vague questions on there. We talked about things like themes, and we did talk about all of the different stories and what our favourites were, the ones that we didn't resonate with so much, and yeah, general just overarching themes of the book. Everyone liked it, yay, which is good. I'm always, when you first ask, so what did you make of it, and everyone's like, yeah, I really liked it, you're like, whew. Not that it matters if they didn't, but it's because that's what book groups are about. But it's always nice when people really like the book that you've chosen. So everyone liked Diving Bells. I loved it. It's, as I said in my April haul, it's a book of short stories that are set in Cornwall, and they're based in real life, but they have folklore and fairy tale and uncanny running through them, and it's a really good balance, I find, between the two. So they are set kind of in modern times, although there's no reference to time. But it's things that you pick up on that you go, well, this sounds modern because they're talking about like a mobile phone or something like that, and then it'll be house spirits and fairies and mermaids. So the ones I made little notes, look, against each story to remind myself what they're about, because I always find with short story collections that I go, oh, what was that one again? So I made little notes about what I thought they were about, so I could remind myself. So my favourite stories in this, I had a few. There were some that I didn't quite, not that I didn't understand, but that didn't connect well with. My favourite one was the title story, Diving Bells, which is about a town where husbands go missing, and the inference is that they go off with mermaids and they just go to the sea, and there's a service provided by this woman who has a diving bell, an old-fashioned diving bell, and she will take the wives in this diving bell under the sea to look for their missing husbands, and she's got a big net, and if they find the husband, she'll just net the husband, hoik him back up and put him on the boat and take him home, which I thought was a fantastic idea. Love that. But they're all ethereal and mystical, but some of them are more kind of, I felt I got a more sad vibe from some of them than the others. And there was one, the second story, called Counting Stones, which is about a woman that gradually turns to stone as just like a regular occurrence. She's like, oh, I can feel my toes turn into stone. It's happening again. And you think, well, this is weird and a terrible thing. But actually, by the end of the story, it's quite uplifting, and you feel quite like, oh, she's turning to stone and she's all right with it. She's gone and like turned all her electric off. She sorted out her job. She's told him she's not going to be at work for a little while. They're cool with that. She's going to go stand on a cliff, turn into a stone. And by the end, it's really lovely, because she's like facing the sea and the sun's in her face, and she's in a circle with all these other people that have just turned to stone. It's bonkers, but really lovely. Another one of my favourites was of mothers and little people. A lot of these stories had larger themes, obviously. So this one I really liked because it was about a mother-daughter relationship and things that you don't see as a child, or when you're growing up, or that you don't appreciate about your parents, particularly your mother. And then when she comes back home as an older woman, I don't want to give a spoiler about it, but it's just such a lovely story. She comes back and she realises something about her mother that she didn't see before, and then you get all these connections that she's made, of observations she made when she was younger about her mother, and now it all makes sense to her, and it was so lovely. So yeah, that was definitely my favourite one. Also, another one was about witches in a home, which was either, I couldn't work out whether it was like an old people's home for witches. I think it was like that, because they had carers that would go around and look after them. Well, not look after them, just kind of monitor them. But they were described as being quite naughty, so that the carer, it was told from the perspective of the carer, and she was like, oh, you had to watch them because they'd go into each other's rooms and they'd be spilling blood and oil all over the place, and there'd be pentagrams of salt on the floor. And sometimes there's some really funny lines in there. It was really good. But that one, yeah, I just loved it, because it was, what a great idea, imagining this home full of naughty witches running around doing spells and being naught. But then that one had to have quite a sad ending, so I was like, oh. Yeah, they're quite heart-wrenching, they really get you. But they had lots of great themes, so a lot to do with relationships between parents and children. And we talked about this, a discussion point in the group, about whether you could determine the age of the author, because she's quite young. I think she's like in her early 20s. This was published in 2012. And we were saying, can you work out the age of the author based on these stories? And I thought you could, because it was very much to do with, you've got to a point in your life where you reflect back on things, particularly to do with your parents growing up and old age. And yeah, there were a lot of themes here, like, what have I written down? belonging, regrets, looking back on your life, reassessing things, time passing, lost loves. There's also a story about a father-daughter relationship, which is quite awkward. That one resonated with me as well. It had, and again, some of them didn't have particularly, they weren't overly magic realism. Like the one with the father-daughter, that was just, he woke up his daughter and took her out at night for a trip to look at the stars, and it's quite a beautiful thing to do, but there was a lot of awkwardness between the two characters. And the only kind of really uncanny thing was the sound of the hounds. You hear these howling sounds in the distance, and she thinks it's these hounds, and it's something to do with Cornish folklore. I mean, I'm not particularly au fait with a lot of Cornish folklore, even though I love it and I go there every year on my holiday, so I should know. But it made me want to find out more about it. She had, I can't remember what it was called. She had a little quote at the beginning of that story. Let's see if I can find it now. So the story is called Wished, and yeah, so it's got this little prelude there saying, adjective, melancholy, pale, lonely, the wished hounds run across the moors hunting the lost and the dying. So she's worried that these hounds are going to catch up with her and her dad as they're walking across the moors to look at the stars. Some beautiful language in here, some really lovely sentences that just made me go, oh, that's beautiful. Like in that story, there's one, her father is a barber and he's cutting her hair, and she says, when he started cutting her hair, thin slivers would fall onto the floor around her feet, dark at first and then drying lighter and splitting into hundreds of scattered pieces like salt or stars. Oh, that's beautiful. So there's some beautiful language in here. It's really well written. I just love the stories. I love the mix between realism and fairy tale, folklore. There's loads going on in here. There's lots to unpack. We had a really good discussion in my book group. One of the other favourite stories was called Notes from the House Spirits, and it was told from the perspective of these house spirits. You don't know who they are. First I thought they were ghosts, and then we talked about it, and then I said actually the more I read it, the more I thought they were spirits from the landscape. These stories are very embedded in the landscape of Cornwall, and if you've ever been to Cornwall, I find it really magical. I love it there. I go whenever I can. There's a lot to do with the feeling that you get from the landscape and how it feeds into those stories of folklore, and the connection that the local people have with the land and those legends. That's quite a strong theme that runs throughout the whole book. But this story about the house spirits was lovely because it was like these house spirits, and they were kind of, they came across like old people always complaining about the residents that would come in. So they'd say stuff like they'd come in couples and they'd change the curtains and they didn't look after the place and we didn't like them. Or there was a mother-in-law that came round, she straightened the shower curtain so that it didn't get mould, we liked her. And they'd like judging all the people that come through the house and live in the house. And it spans like lots of years, because there's one couple that come in, they have a baby, they see the baby grow up, and then they see the boy go off to university, and the house spirits are confused. They're like, well, the boy has disappeared and no one is looking for him. Why is this? And they get really confused. So it's quite funny, and it's just a really lovely story, and you get the impression that a lot of time is passing, and also slightly melancholy, but that one was quite funny. So yeah, we all love that one. What else? There was a couple that just didn't kind of connect with me so much, like one called Magpies, where this dude sees this injured magpie on the side of the road as he's driving home, and he gets out of his car and just follows it, and it's super creepy. It really like made me creep out, and it's run as a dual narrative of him following this magpie and also reflecting back on a meeting he had with a woman that used to live in the town that came back to see him. He's always lived in this town, and to me that kind of spoke of things like regrets and with a forlorn longing, looking back on his life and thinking, well, I never left and I'm still here. And she's looking back on this town and going, oh God, can you imagine? We came here all the time and look how run down it is. Small town mentality kind of thing. So, I mean, they're all great stories, but some of them I just didn't connect with as much as others. But overall, I love this collection. It's only like 200 pages, so it didn't take too long to read. It's a lovely, lovely book. I would highly recommend it. So, just a little quick review on that one. I'm going to do another wrap-up video of everything that I've read this quarter, so January to April. So I'll be posting that one hopefully soon, and also super excited about reading Circe, so we'll do that one in a month after I've read it for my book club. But in the meantime, talk to me about book groups, please. I want to know, are you in a book group? How does it run? How often do you meet? How do you pick your books? I know for those that run in a library, you're restricted because you have like a list of books that you have to choose from. So yeah, you're kind of restricted on what you can choose. So I want to know, how do your discussions go? Do you have questions like we do, or do you just all randomly talk? Where do you meet? Tell me. I want to know stuff. So talk to me in the comments below, and I shall see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.